If only YouTube had a way for you to smell this flower. It's a wallflower. What we like about it is that at this time of the year, it gives you a lot of color here in the garden when really only the spring bulbs are the things that are coming up. This is an evergreen perennial that you grow as a biennial. It loves the full sun, but you can notice even here in our garden, this part is quite shady here in the morning, so it does well even here. One of the best things about this plant is that you can grow it in any type of soil, as long as it's well draining and moist. It grows to around a height of 10 to 50 centimeters. It comes in a whole variety of colors. One thing when you're working with this plant, it doesn't take too well to fertilizer. Doesn't really even need fertilizer when you're planting it in. And every year you can add some mulch, some compost around it, and that'll really keep it coming back. Because it's an early spring flower, you're going to notice towards the end of spring, depends on your zone, maybe even by early summer, by midsummer, you're going to be out of flowers. But if you'll just pinch off those spent blooms, you can encourage it to keep blooming for a longer time. Because of its height, it works really well here on the edge of the border. We have it in this beautiful dark red, burnt orange color. We've had it in purple before, and we also have one in yellow that I'd like to show you now. So here's the wallflower in this yellow. Lars calls it white, so we'll call it a yellow-white variety. As I mentioned before, it does grow around 10 to 50 centimeters tall. It also gets that big in its spread if you give it time. So when you're planting it, here it's on the very edge of our border. We do have a few smaller things in the front. Just keep that in mind that this guy will get quite big. Seeds are also easy to take, and we'd like to show you that now.
So it's mid-May and our wallflower has finished flowering and it's starting to set seeds here. It's not quite ready yet, but these long kind of bean looking ones, when they turn brown, it's ready to collect the seeds. And another great thing is most of the time I kind of make more baby ones of these wallflower by doing propagation, by doing small cuttings. So what I do, I take a little stem really down to the green, because there's a lot of energy in these. If there's any kind of flower left, I kind of trim that off and remove the lower leaves. Doesn't need a lot of foliage on, even so it uses the energy on producing new roots. I add it on the side of a pot here, because then later on it's easy to get out instead of placing them in the middle. Place it a lot in one pot here, and then I keep note, you have to have it kept watered here so it doesn't dry out. I place this either in a unheated greenhouse or in a corner of your garden away from direct sunlight. And then after a few months, you start to see new growth on it, and you can check if the roots are coming down. It's a sign that it's ready to be planted directly out in your garden, and it will be a true copy of the color of the mother plant.
It's also easy to grow from seed, and that's what we'd like to show you now. So for this, we're using regular potting soil because it's the cheapest. We did add water beforehand. That'll help our seeds not get lost and tossed around in the tray.
Oh, and if you want to see a great video on how to winter sow, click the link here.
Good job, Lars.
So I'm going ahead and sowing my Erysimum, also called the Wallflower, and look at the seeds here, how pretty they are. To really get a bunch of those, I'm making sure I'm sowing a lot of them here. There we go. And then I just have to add a handful of my soil on top, so they are just barely covered. There we go. And left to do is stick the name tag in, and then I'll just leave it in the greenhouse away from direct sunlight. Every 2 weeks I'm gonna spray it with water if it needs, if the surface seems dry. And then I'll just wait until spring, and once the plants are a little bit bigger, I can plant them directly out in the garden.
Now it's time to place these in the glass house. They're going to need sunlight, and they're going to need to be watered once every 2 weeks with a little sprayer. Just keep an eye on them. Once these seedlings start to sprout, they'll be ready to plant out directly in the garden come springtime.
So it has been 3 months and the wallflower has sprouted in the tray, and they have the second set of leaves. So I have repotted some of them in a group, and they will stay here until they are a little bit bigger and their roots start to show in the bottom, and then they'll go out in the garden. If you don't have the time or the space, you could also just plant it directly from the tray out in the garden. So this wallflower over here really reminds me of when we first moved into the garden and kind of changed it, because normally it is, as Alan said, it's a biennial, but we can trick it to really stay alive so it won't die back. Because this one we planted 6 years ago when we moved into the house. Once it flowered, I really give it a hard trim back, and that really made it get more evergreen, more lush again and more bushy. And also the small cuttings, I did not throw them away. I took the small cuttings, took the top of the dead flower heads off and placed them in some pots soil and kept it watered, and then they sprouted and they are placed around in the garden as well. So in that way you can really trick it to come again.
So as Lars said, yeah, you can cut them back, but you have to be careful for how far back you cut. This was my mistake. It was a beautiful pink one. I cut it back a bit too far here at the end of the winter, and it is coming. It's coming back to life there in the bottom very slowly, but you can trick them only so far before these woody stems you just destroy. So just keep that in mind if you are going to cut it back.
So if you don't want to propagate wallflower by cutting or by seed, you could also go to like a planting center where they have these really, and they come in so many different kind of colors, and they're also really great in containers. And this one I'm actually going to plant in this container and place it just around our new terrace here. So what I have is I have my pot here, and I always take some that has drainage holes. That's really important for me, so excess water can get away. And then I use either broken terracotta stones or even plastic containers. I have whatever you have to do, or even small sticks from the garden. I place that down here first, and then I'll just add a good amount of nutritious soil here. Really give it, and it's quite of a big pot here, but this wallflower will really quickly fill out the whole pot here. So just around here, and then I'll just loosen it very gently here. And a lot of these plants that has been from a planting center or nurseries, you can see the rooting system here. They've really been in a pot for quite a long time. So instead of that it keeps just growing around in a circle, it's a very good idea to really loosen very gently here the roots, so they kind of look more down and don't keep on growing in that really bad way around in a pot. There we have it. And then I'll place it here in the middle and add a few more handfuls of soil around. And then really important to water it. It's quite hot these days, so it needs a lot of water here, definitely in the beginning, and in general just when we do either summer flowers or perennials in a container, they do need more water than being out in the garden. Okay, and if you want also for water not to evaporate really quickly, if you live somewhere super sunny, you could add bark, pebbles or whatever to keep that really water more on the surface of the soil here. But I'll just leave it like this, and then I'll keep it watered, place it over here in the garden.
So until YouTube gets a way for you to actually smell this flower yourself, you're just going to have to grow it in your garden. So thanks so much for watching. Let us know if you grow wallflowers in your garden, and especially what colors. We're always interested in finding some new ones for ours.